Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw us some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall. And Kyle, how are you doing on your spooky season? We got to have a wrap. We got to have a catch up. We got to figure out where you're at. What's your vibe like so far?
What is my... So I watched... God, it took a bit of a backseat for some life stuff. I had a wedding I had to go to where I actually luckily did get to connect with some people over discussion of, CIA fuckery, the stuff that I've been sort of reading about. So in a way that's like spooky, right? Like spooks are involved. Yeah. I think the last horror movie I watched the new HBO Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
Which was fine. That is my review. I don't have much else. There was like a couple moments where like I watched it with my dad, and so like there were a couple moments where it was like there was some like tonal whiplash where they were doing stuff that felt like really like silly B-movie shit. And it made me and my dad laugh, and yeah, I was the vampires look cool. It's a good vampire design. But God, I guess, well, okay, so people who follow the It Gets Weird Twitch know that we've been playing some really cool horror games on there, and we've got one more horror game night coming up. Actually, I think it's going to be, if you're a patron donor, it's the day after this episode goes up on Patreon. And then if you're a non-patron donor, it's the day before this episode premieres to the general public. So, if you snooze, you lose, I guess. And it's just, all the more reason to check out that Patreon. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I mean, the horror games have been great. I played Mouthwashing, which I thought was really cool. And I played World of Horror, which is like, it's basically a roguelike, but for like Dungeons and Dragons style RPG encounters, like text-based.
Okay. It's
pretty interesting, and all the artwork is inspired by Junji Ito and stuff, and so that was very cool, but it was a little hard to grasp at first. But all these things are perfect, like, spooky season vibes, for sure. Mm-hmm. So I've been enjoying that. What about you?
I finally watched, I'm not going to talk about all of it because there's some stuff that I'm going to talk to you more about on a bonus show, most likely.
Oh, sure.
But I watched the original Creature from the Black Lagoon for the first time.
Nice.
That movie whips. I really like that movie a lot. And I've watched like 4 or 5 of the like kind of
the Universal
movies.
Horror. Yeah.
And they're all really satisfying. Like, don't low rate those things because they were from like however many years ago. That shit still whips. If you like movies, watch Universal monster movies, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that out sometime. It's actually
plus they're all like 75 minutes. They're all like perfect. Fucking. They're all like you get in and out, and they don't overstay their welcome.
Love
and
that.
They're so much better for it.
It's like I hate talking. I hate how much like runtime has become a factor to me in assessing whether or not I want to watch a movie, just because of how many 2.5 hour fucking movies I have to sit through only to be like, yeah, 2.5 hours and I didn't really like it. And every movie has to be that way now. So it is very exciting. I mean, this is how I felt about going through John Carpenter's stuff. Is like all of the shit is like an hour and a half, and it like doesn't waste a single moment of it. So
as soon as it passes 90 minutes, he gets mad. Like he's very much a don't overstay your welcome filmmaker, and that is part of what makes him so satisfying.
I'm fine with movies being long if it demands it, but I very, very much respect that way of like looking at a film of like do not overstay your welcome. I really like that. But yeah, so I guess John Carpenter and Universal monster movies, I'll have to check those out, because my dad is the one who's like, when he was a small child, his like first horror movie was Creature from the Black Lagoon. So he has like quite an affinity for that movie. So I've always meant
Gilman himself.
Yeah, I've always meant to check it out, and I never have. It's funny, and this will be a great segue, what I'm about to say. But like my dad, the movie that I always think of as introducing me to like black and white film is The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, okay.
About a UFO and an alien and Gort and the command of Gort to Klaatu Barada Nikto. That's like, I think sci-fi was like my avenue into like getting into black and white film. And it would only make sense for me to, check out the monster movies too. I don't know how I've avoided it this long, honestly.
They're worth your time. I've enjoyed all of the ones I've seen pretty immensely. So.
Now, that being said, speaking of Gort and Klaatu Barada Nikto,
so I'm assuming we're talking about aliens of some kind.
Look, okay, you know how it is, Niall. Sometimes you get these amazing, bizarre alien encounters that have all the spices and flavor of a cryptid encounter. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh, yeah. Like a lot of times with those kind of one-off aliens that don't appear. You don't get this with Greys. You get it with like the Metal Men and fucking
Flatwoods Falkville, Flatwoods. Yeah. There's all kinds of stories of like unique individual alien encounters that never reoccur. They don't come back. They stay as their own sort of weird story on the face of UFO history that like are often difficult to contend with if you want to assume that the people talking about them are telling the truth.
Yeah.
And those stories are always great. I really love them. And like they've come to become some of my favorite stories about aliens. And honestly, it's a brand of extraterrestrial encounter that you simply don't get anymore. 'Cause like it's like in 2024, people are filming shit with their phones. I'm not saying anything new here, but it's like nobody has filmed the weird ass little like robot man that comes down in a saucer. It's a different era. And so that's why I've brought you a fascinating story today. That is the story of Claude Edwards and the Tuscumbia Space Penguins.
That's okay. That's a new one I don't know or have not heard of.
Yeah,
fantastic.
And they all have incredible names like that. Tuscumbia Space Penguins, the Pancake Bakers from Mars, fucking the Johnsonville Bratwursts. Yeah. They all have names like that, where they are a location and then space or Mars or whatever. And then whatever creature or robot they resemble.
Whatever it most looks like, yeah.
Yes.
It's pretty good.
So a little fun behind the scenes thing. I had initially had a little trouble deciding whether or not to do the story because while it's an encounter with what seem to be alien beings, it also suffers from quote unquote cryptidification, in that much of the information about it online is a repetitive retelling of the same fucking shit.
Yeah.
That we've complained about many times on this show. And I keep having to remind myself, but like, to be completely honest, the way the way it had initially come off to me, in when I like did my kind of cursory skimming of a bunch of different websites, is like this story is told the same way over and over with the same details, and doesn't like have like a proper source back to anything. And I kind of began to wonder if it had been made up of whole cloth. Just like it felt like one of those stories that like appeared out of nowhere online that somebody spread.
Yeah.
But I really think that this is mostly the result of the enshittification of web searching. Because I did a little more digging. I had to do a little extra digging. I was able to find actually some of the official UFO investigation case files and some good evidence that not evidence, proof that the man who encountered these aliens was real. Like I wasn't sure until I did some digging that he was even
proof.
real.
Yeah, you have proof that at least this was a sighting, if not that it happened, but that the sighting was actually reported.
Yeah,
it wasn't
exactly.
just totally made up.
There's actually a genuine reason for why it kind of feels that way too. So it didn't really get reported on, and it didn't get really and when it was reported on, it was like not associated with the man who had the sighting, which we'll get to.
Okay.
So after I found all this stuff, like I found photos. There's like photos of the place where this all went down, and the man who experienced it and stuff. And once I found that stuff, I was like, all right, we're golden, fantastic. So much of what I know about this story comes from the Miller County Museum and Historical Society, where they have these progress notes archives and articles that are written by a guy named Rob Murphy about just local history.
Okay.
So, story begins. Check this out. February 14th, 1967. That's right.
All right. Little Valentine's
Day surprise. You've heard of the October surprise. Get ready for the Valentine's Day alien surprise. So February 14th, 1967, and we got Claude Edwards, and that's Claude. Claude isn't a description of the man. He didn't have Clawed.
Yeah, he's not like half lobster or anything.
Right. Not as far as I could tell. No, Claude as in the name, in case you were wondering. So every article about Edwards refers to... This is one of my favorite aspects of this story, because the stories that you'll find about this just fucking hammers it into your brain over and over. They always refer to him as, quote, a no-nonsense Missouri farmer. They say it a lot to try and paint a picture of a guy who, doesn't fiddle-faddle with no poppycock.
He's just a good old downhole boy that never tried to start any yarns, never tried to weave a yarn out into the world, only shot from the hip,
I don't know why, but this is such a weird specific thing. But the way you said good old down home boy or whatever, do you know what I'm about to say?
No.
It makes me think of the song by Bomb the Music Industry, Sweet Home Canada, because it has an opening clip of David Cross talking about George Bush, where David Cross says that exact phrasing.
I'm a real straight shooter, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wow, our brains work in mysterious ways.
Truly.
I kind of wonder if maybe you had just unconsciously said that without realizing you were
we both tapped into the same drawer of the Akashic Records unintentionally.
That's true.
And came up with the same thing.
That's true. Do you think that like people who visit the Akashic Records, like every once in a while, there's like a meet cute where they go for the same record?
Yeah.
They
their
pull away
hands
with the same
spiritually
info.
touch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's something like that. So yeah, this guy is a no-nonsense Missouri farmer, and like, I'll spare you, but they say that a lot. Basically, they rephrase "no nonsense" multiple different ways throughout the articles. So, cold winter day, Valentine's Day. And it's Miller County, where Edwards managed a farm, basically out in the sticks, but not far from the city of Tuscumbia, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And shouts out to Missouri. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Tuscumbia, I don't know. So Edwards is out there farming away, minding his own business, when this is actually one of my favorite little tidbits because it's kind of eerie, genuinely. He's just farming, right? He's just out there. It's about like 7 a.m., so it's like sunrise-ish. And he suddenly, it just like suddenly dawns on him that all of the cattle in his east field have all begun staring in just one particular direction. All of them.
Oh, okay.
So he like looks up and sees all of his cattle doing that, and he's like, well, I should probably look at what they're looking at, because what the hell?
What's distracting an entire herd of cattle?
Yes. Which, like, honestly, like, it's an eerie little tidbit, but at the same time, like, I don't know if you've seen the video. There's a video of a guy standing next to a field at a farm, and he's like, if I remember correctly, he's like chugging Coke and then belching loud as fuck, and the cows are all kind of congregating around him as he.
Okay.
I've also seen him do this with.
This video.
I've seen people do this with like musical instruments, summon cows, because the cows will come and check out your violin playing or whatever. But I like the guy who belches at them.
I mean, look, you gotta find different ways to get the cows interested. You gotta give them enrichment by belching at them, and sometimes playing the ukulele. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So he goes and like follows the gaze of all these cows, and he sees a perplexing object sitting in one of the fields, not too far from him, some sort of UFO. So here's an actual quote, by the way, from the article that I mentioned, if you don't quite understand the type of guy we're dealing with here. So it says, quote, Edwards was a simple, hardworking, salt-of-the-earth Midwesterner who had no time for any kind of foolishness regarding aliens, flying saucers, or the like.
Salt of the earth and had no time for foolishness. All right.
Yeah, and you better not be bringing any alien shit to him, because he just doesn't have time for that nonsense.
Yeah.
He's got a farm to manage. And it goes on to say, so as his worn boots tramped across the icy rock-strewn slope that took him from his home to his barn, nothing could have shocked him more than to see what appeared to be a UFO sitting in one of his nearby fields. So, you know, we don't see simple, hardworking, unassuming farmers encountering bizarre alien creatures these days because of woke. So we actually have a sketch that Edwards made of the UFO he says he saw. And it's a very simple sketch. It's basically a big domed object drawn like almost like the third of a circle, but like you can kind of already imagine, like it's just a dome. And at the base of the domed object around its like, I don't know what you would call it, the rim, like the base of the thing, is a series of long oval portholes or holes. Like he straight up says that these are holes. So in Edward's own words, he says, quote, the object just looked like a big shell, grayish green looking outfit. And underneath there were oblong holes where the lights were coming out. They were so bright you couldn't see when you got up there, as if a color wheel was turning inside the thing. So
that's interesting.
Colors coming out.
Yeah, and like a color wheel, so it's like changing colors.
Yeah, that's
kind of thing.
I think the implication there. It's like, for those who don't know, the color wheels are like these. How would you describe it? They're like because this was an actual
they're
device
a disc that's sliced up into sections with the colors in kind of chromatic order or whatever you want to call it.
And you spin it around.
And it spins around in front of a light and creates the different colors.
Yeah. So that's what apparently emanated from the holes in this craft. You'll also find that a lot of the articles mention Edwards describing the craft as mushroom-like. I never saw... So I have a little bit of a like pet theory here because I didn't really see a quote where he was explicitly saying it was like a mushroom. But it makes sense, and it almost feels like the mushroom description may have come from his sketch, which is distinctly mushroom-esque. But the only thing that I saw was like of his actual own words saying what it looked like was what I was just telling you. But people say it's mushroom-like, yeah.
Okay.
So now another point in the no-nonsense corner for Edwards, and another part of the story that I really love. I guess that after noticing this, strange craft, Edwards simply like kept his eyes on the thing and just like walked back to his barn. It like gives off this vibe of like him just thinking like, well, that's none of my business. He just watches.
Alternately going to keep my eyes on it to go get a shotgun because a lot of these people love to fucking fire at craft.
Yes, well, he doesn't actually go get a shotgun because what he does is he keeps his eyes on it. He slowly makes his way back to his barn, puts the feed bucket down, and then closes up the barn and like locks it, and then turns back to face the object. So when he does turn back to face this object, it actually does quickly become his business because he watches as a group of small critters begin, quote, hastily swarming just beneath where the craft sat in the field. And to kind of like paint you a picture here, this domed craft has like a central shaft that is touched down on the ground. It's got like a singular kickstand. Yeah.
So it does have a toadstool.
Exactly.
Situation.
Exactly.
It's got the whatever they call that. Yeah.
That's why the mushroom thing makes sense. Is like in his drawing, it's the domed thing, but then it has like a like a physical shaft. So
okay.
Yeah. There's like creatures that are swarming about at the base of the craft underneath it. And here's what the article says, quote, Edwards estimated that he was separated from the odd entities by about 70 feet of land, 2 wire fences, and a smattering of cows. The gutsy farmer was not pleased by the fact that his cows were being spooked or that his property was being trespassed on, even if said trespassers happened to hail from out of this world. The farmer, no doubt fueled by a combination of curiosity and adrenaline, climbed the first gate and started walking directly toward the ostensibly alien interlopers.
Is he yelling the whole time? I don't care who you are, where you're from, you're trespassing.
Yeah.
This man is so no nonsense. He doesn't care what these things are. He just wants them off his lawn.
Yeah. He's like, you have brought too much nonsense to my farm this Valentine morning, and you're going to have to fuck right off. No, honestly, he doesn't say anything in his story about him trying to communicate in any way.
Communication is nonsense.
Yeah, it would be nonsense to try and talk to aliens, right? Because they're not real. Yeah. So, avoid the whole nonsensical situation altogether and just don't say anything.
Okay.
No, he really doesn't say anything about trying to communicate. And the other thing that's very important is, which we'll get to here shortly, the entire encounter is extremely quick. It does not last long. So Edwards begins approaching these alien creatures, right? And as he does so, these creatures begin to swarm even harder. And the descriptions in the articles make it sound like they were becoming more agitated. So the creatures are bustling around very quickly at the base of this craft. And in the descriptions that Edward would later give, these things were about 3 feet tall and were a grayish green color akin to the color of their craft. Now, here's another little point of contention with this story. There are drawings that Edwards would make of the creatures as well. And in the drawings, they are like a vibrant, like a verdant green color. Not quite the grayish green. I have no idea if this is just for the sake of not having to fetch a specific marker that has like a specific green color, or if this is like meant to reflect the actual color of these things. But he talks about them as like not being like a vibrant green color, but like a darker sort of like grayish green, which the grayish green description is important for one of the theories as to what happened here, which we'll get to much later. But
I have a theory.
Sure.
So far, it sounds like this guy got reverse Hulked, these things. Because the whole thing with Hulk started out gray, but it was hard to reproduce on the page, so he got switched to bright green.
Okay.
And so it kind of actually just Hulked, because the reproductions are going bright green because it's easier to reproduce.
He saw, yeah, right. That might, I mean, I genuinely wonder if maybe that was why they end up getting this like brighter, like vibrant green color later, because like people like I found like people discussing this case online, and that's where I got some of the like suggestion. Basically, I found a forum where there were some like turbo UFO nerds. Like they're talking about like velocity and like historical weather data and all this shit, and like trying to analyze like the direction that the thing came from and then where it went, and it just doing that kind of stuff, which is always very funny to me, but in a good way. I like it. But they, there was like some talk of like, well, there's a discrepancy between the color in Edwards' actual drawing of the creatures versus what he said. And I'm here to say, I think it's literally, that was just the green they had access to. Like, I think that's the actual simplest explanation for the detail there. But yeah, so yeah, he actually, like, Edwards got fucking hulked. The aliens got hulked. So I have another little quote here from the article that says, "It would seem that either these beings had no hands or that their arms were moving too swiftly for Edwards to discern the shape of the appendages. Edwards also claimed that these aliens were either wearing goggles or had large, wide-set black eyes. They also had dark protuberances where their noses and mouths ought to have been. Whether or not he believed the protrusion to be a natural part of their physical features or some sort of protective or possibly breathing apparatus is not clear."
I like that this guy is so uncertain. He's just trying to describe what it looks like and where it is, and not really going too hard on saying these are definitely eyes, these are definitely mouths.
Well,
that is actually kind of good.
A lot of the details are blurred for Edwards. I mean, you have to think of like the confusion of the moment and how like things went down very, very quickly. I think later on he says that it took less than 5 minutes for this whole fucking thing to happen. And the other thing that I would also point out is like, we did, oh geez, I just did this a handful of episodes ago, the Cisco Grove encounter, where like, this is a common theme in these like late 60s and 70s cases where like people are encountering humanoid or like humanoid adjacent beings that have like, they're uncertain of whether or not those beings have suits on, and they're unsure of whether the noses and the eyes are goggles or actual like biological like parts of the creature, you know, like they're just not sure. This case is the same way, where like he describes something that almost sounds like a gas mask, but not quite. Like they've got goggle like eyes almost, and this long sort of wide nose spot. But it's like, it's again, the detail, it's very confused. We don't really know exactly what these look like, and there's again discrepancies. So
the whole gas mask thing makes sense though. Like it is a common theme that I hadn't fully put together. That you do get a lot of those, like that kind of sounds like a radiation suit or a fireproof suit or a gas mask or a, you know, in a lot of these weird one-off UFO encounters in this time period.
I really can't wait to get to one of the like non-extraterrestrial theories about this one, because it's very fun to me. And just keep in mind that like the critters almost look like they're in safe these safety suits and gas mask type things that, but not quite. So yeah, lots of details are just kind of blurred. And while this is one of those one-of-a-kind alien encounters with that like vibe of uniqueness, I thought it was interesting. The Miller County Museum article points out that there are some similarities between this case and another alien creature encounter with a more humanoid creature called the Canula humanoid.
Okay.
This comparison makes a lot more sense if the creatures were wearing green protective suits, like Edwards sort of guesses at. The Canula humanoid was seen by some Finnish lumberjacks while they were working in the woods during the winter. And this creature is also small. It appeared to be wearing some sort of green protection suit with almost a mask. But it's much more of a humanoid creature than what Edwards saw. These things, like, we'll get into it, but like he doesn't really like have an idea of what they look like below the waist. Just to the point where like there's basically no details there. Like you don't know, no idea if these things got, dick, pussy. Yeah. Dick is a type of pussy, really, but like we don't know. We don't know what's going on down there.
I see. What's funny is when you started saying we don't know what's down there, I immediately went to they could have treads like Grover from Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, they really could.
And then you just started listing off.
We don't know.
I guess that's.
We don't know if they have genitals. Okay, we don't know if they have genitals. We don't know if they have like legs or treads. I would love to envision them as having treads, though, especially with the grounder.
But, okay, think about this because you've got. Think about his eyes.
Sure.
So that's Grounder, right? Scratch is the chicken, and then Grounder is him.
Yes.
Think about that. Think about the overall shape of the body.
Oh my
Think
God.
about the drill nose.
The green color.
I think this thing might just actually be Grounder.
Oh my God. Sonic the Hedgehog real. Mobius, the dimension that Mobius, the planet that Sonic is from, has intersected with ours, and this man was just seeing a classic Scratch and Grounder. This is so. If you didn't watch the Sonic Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog Saturday morning cartoon, I don't know,
not the good one,
not the good one.
If you didn't watch the stupid one for 3-year-olds that I watched a lot,
I watched it a lot too. I had VHS tapes of it. So if you didn't watch that, you're shit out of luck. Just Google, go to YouTube, look up Scratch Grounder Pingus. Which will take you to like a good video to understand all of that.
Of course, you have a goddamn YouTube poop to reference for that.
So, that's Pingas, by the way. And honestly, if you're thinking about how quickly these things are like propelling themselves around, I think it would make more sense if they had some sort of robotic treads than legs. So I think you're onto something. It gets compared to this Canula humanoid, which is an interesting story, but like this is all assuming that these were suits and goggles and stuff, and not like they're nude alien asses, right? Like whatever weird alien bodies they have. It's impossible to say. So regardless of whether they were nude or besuited, Edwards would later describe them as, quote, little green penguins. They had no visible necks, and Edwards didn't discern any hands at the end of their weird flappy arm appendages, and flap those appendages did. He describes them. He describes that like as they would continue to sort of freak out and swarm around the base of this craft, their little green penguin arms would like swing around their sides. So it's just a bunch of little grounders with flappy arms just fucking
doing
flapping around.
Cartoon. Yeah. So they just got shocked or Sonic just appeared behind them.
Yeah.
And they started flailing around comically and flailing their arms around pretty intensely.
Exactly. So no visible necks, and like I said, for whatever reason, like strange thing here, but like Edwards never gets a good read on what the creatures are moving around on. Like we have no idea what they're propelling themselves with. All of the descriptions and drawings lack detail beneath the waist. So maybe that's like an advanced sort of censoring technology Maybe they had like all their whole shit out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just alien technology, it's like instead of just like putting like a bar over it or like, scrambling it, they wipe it from your mind.
Yeah.
So you can never remember what the like dicks and stuff looked like.
It's really interesting to think of an alien culture instead of, or maybe after they've already involved clothes, they then were just like, you know what? Fuck clothes. Why don't we just make it so that we can censor whatever we want in the memories of the people that view us? And it's just like a massive invasion of like personal property and privacy in that way.
No,
you know?
it's sort of a harrowing thought that you could be censored by removing it from somebody's mind. Sort of Orwellian Black Mirror
2026.
But like this also creates some logistical issues if they do in fact have human style genitals down there, because like what if they're trying to, procreate and they can't.
You're so fucking stuck up on what their dicks look like that you're like, I keep trying to go off on Sonic rants and shit, and you're just like, but no, they're dicks though.
I mean,
what do those things look like? How do they swang? If I were to go lay down on the ground, could I even see the sun?
Well, it just now makes me ask, like, if that's how they censor their genitals, how do they then use them? Like how
do, have you? God, this is.
Yeah.
You know how a lot of Japanese porn gets censored.
I'm not familiar with that.
Where they it's just like a white absence of nothing there, and like
I've never seen that, so I don't know.
Okay, it's fucking sure. So I think it works like that.
Okay, I see. I gotcha. Okay,
it's just like a little shaft of light.
Sure. Yeah. So things continue to rapidly get weirder as Edwards gets more involved. So at this point, the article claims that he was now. I don't like this whole like, it almost is like feeling like they're putting words in Edwards' mouth, but there's so few actual direct quotes from him that we have to just assume that like what's being said in some of these like UFO reports are what was dictated by him.
Well, here's the thing.
Makes sense?
You can tell if it's actually a quote from him if there's no nonsense in it. If there's any nonsense, even a whiff of it,
that's
he didn't say it.
A good point. Well, apparently that we might have to go back on that idea, because he apparently at this point was convinced that he was facing a UFO and an invader from outer space.
Oh, okay.
Which is like, I don't know. It seems like it runs counter to the no nonsense idea, but whatever. Maybe I have to reassess my conception of nonsense here. So Edwards lacked a weapon, right? Like, you thought he was going to the barn to get a shotgun? No. So he just picks up two hefty rocks, like two big rocks. And according to him, his plan was that he was going to try and put holes in the craft with the rocks to try and keep it from flying away.
Okay.
Now, something was off, though. So apparently, Edwards starts moving towards the craft and the creatures underneath it. And when he gets within about 15 feet from it, he suddenly senses that there is some invisible force that is preventing him from moving any further, any closer to the object. He claims that there was nothing physically there. He couldn't feel or see anything, but there was like the pressure of some sort of force field that he assumed was being emitted from the craft.
Okay, so it's got a force field that's keeping him away from it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He says, this is an actual quote from Edwards. He says, quote, "I thought I was going right up to it. I got up there and there it was. I just walked up against a wall." So this is when he gets close to it and then freezes in its force field. This is when he gets like a good look at the thing, and we get all of the like descriptions of it that he later recounts to the UFO investigators. He says that it was soundless and it was glinting, and that it had a metallic surface that was smooth. There were no seams on it. And he compares it texturally to, quote, shiny silk.
Interesting. Okay.
He would also give an estimate of the top of the craft, saying that it was about 18 feet in diameter and about 8 feet at its apex. So like 8 feet tall, like the dome part is like 8 feet tall and it's 18 feet wide approximately. This is a thing that we'll get into a little bit later, but like some of the reports say that he says it was 15 feet wide. So there's a couple weird details like that where it's like, I don't know what to do with the discrepancy there.
You just mention what you found and move on, I guess.
Yeah. So the sort of central shaft that was coming out from the center of the craft that seemed to be it's almost like landing gear. It was, I guess, the same silvery, shiny, silky material as the actual domed part of the craft. And it was not a lot taller than the beings that were currently under the craft bustling around. So I have here another little quote from the article for some of the specific details. It says, quote, "At this point, the perplexed farmer could also discern evenly spaded oval portals, about 12 inches long and 12 inches apart, situated around the lower rim of the saucer. Edwards would insist that these portals did not seem to function as windows, as he could see a dazzling array of colors radiating from each side of the ovals. The colored lights oscillated as if they were spinning behind the portals." So the color wheel, right?
Right. So is that? Does he think that that's some form of propulsion system, or does he not?
I don't
have
even
any
think.
theories?
I don't even think he speculates. Like I didn't.
Okay.
That's what I thought when I read it. Is like maybe this is its way of like. Yeah, propulsion. Maybe it's some sort of weird anti-gravity technology. Who the fuck knows, right? So, despite this invisible force field, Edwards takes a few steps back. He like steps 10 feet away from the thing where it halted him with the force field, and then takes one of the big rocks in his hand and just tosses it. And he attempts to chuck it at the UFO with his plan of like trying to prevent it from flying off. Now, this does not work. The big rock that he throws, it bounces noiselessly off of the force field and falls to the ground. So he takes the second rock and then he fucking chucks it. And this one supposedly skips over the top of the craft like a stone skipped over water and then comes to land in the field behind the craft.
Okay.
So the force field is also not having any rock shit.
I do like that he is assuming that this thing works like a helicopter, where if you put like a little bit of weight on one of the blades, it will just like fucking capsize and go nuts. That's a fun reading of a UFO.
Yeah, he's just I don't know. I would have assumed that he would have had some sort of weapon, but I guess maybe it wasn't on hand. So he, a farmer out in the sticks in Missouri in like the late 60s. It just seems like that should be the case, but he's got these rocks. So after the second stone was thrown, hang on. Let me think for a second. Second stone, Jesus Christ. Sinners, right? Like he without. Can we workshop like a joke about
let he who is without sin cast the first stone
at the penguin aliens?
Let he who is without nonsense
yes,
skip the first rock across the alien force field.
Let he who is without nonsense try to assault an alien penguin craft with large stones. That doesn't really roll off the tongue. What's really good
and
about
also it's kind of unclear morally, like what we're trying to get across there.
It does not like give you an idea of any sort of moral statement for sure. One of the things that I've kind of realized about this Jesus guy is he says a lot of stuff that's it rolls off the tongue. It's very like sloganeering type shit. So I don't know. I mean, that's like one of like three things I heard he supposedly Jesus said. I don't know.
Yeah, look, he was a real kind of sloganeer of his time. He had a lot of catchphrases like "Hey, I'm Jesus, you're saved,"
Yeah.
and that's really what most people love about him.
Yeah, I think it was Jesus who said, "When I die, fuck it, I want to go to hell." Or wait, no, it was maybe
Yeah, that's that's just like the most that was his rebellion anthem
Right.
when he got mad at his dad.
Yes, but then he kind of revamped that, said, "I want to go to hell, smack up Satan, then fly up to heaven where all my homies are waiting." So
Okay.
anyways, God, sorry about the Jesus tangent. It's just an interesting guy.
You're apologizing to God directly? Okay.
Oh, mostly to you. But God, if God will take it, that too. So after the second stone, these creatures all just suddenly and quickly gather up behind the shaft, like out of Edwards's view. They go behind it, and he loses sight of them, and then the craft suddenly tilts. And it tilts in his direction, in Edwards's direction, and it does that once, twice, and then the third time it like launches off the ground silently. It starts to like rise into the air, and then it just suddenly flies away at an unbelievable speed in a southeasterly direction. So within mere moments after that, the craft completely vanished into the sky. So this is actually the end of Edwards's encounter with the space penguins. This is actually where it ends for him, but there's some other stuff after the fact. So a couple different UFO investigators would wind up checking these out, this case out, but the most notable one would be Ted Phillips. And Ted Phillips, we know because he was a researcher known for investigating the Socorro UFO, aka the Lonnie Zamora case, who is the cop out in, it was like maybe Arizona or California, who sees a weird UFO and stuff. And it was like another early Project Blue Book case, I do believe.
Yeah.
Because on the Socorro UFO case, Ted Phillips would, I guess, work with J. Allen Hynek and become friends with him. And then, Phillips would give like a bunch of MUFON symposiums, publish various UFO texts, things like that. So Edwards would eventually speak with Ted Phillips. And there's a weird little bit here where like the article kind of is vague about when Phillips meets up with Edwards. So I guess Ted Phillips was introduced to Claude Edwards through Edwards's brother, which like kind of had me like speculating, well, okay, you know what? I'm going to wait. I'm going to put a pause on what I was about to say. We'll get to that in a moment. Basically, he meets up with Phillips, who apparently came to meet up with him 3 months after the incident occurred, which in the actual articles that get spread around, it's extremely vague about how soon after Phillips shows up, which is important because Phillips will like take a photo of an indentation in the ground that he will cite as evidence, like trace evidence of the craft. But Edwards told Philip this, apparently, quote, "The whole thing took about 5 minutes, maybe 10. I have never seen anything like it. It looked like a shiny silk or something. I couldn't tell. I was going to tell, though, if I could have hit it with that rock." So,
look, that silk would have really crumpled underneath the rock. I sure that makes.
And that's the other thing is like I don't quite know where the like force field thing, because like in this quote, it almost sounds like he's like, damn, if I'd hit it, I would have known if it was a metallic object or if it was like silk, like.
Yeah,
it's a little confusing, and unfortunately, it's
a big inflatable.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the question is like, was this made of? Anyways, what was this? That is the question, right? And the way the story is told now it sounds like Edwards like was just encountering so many alien technologies and shit that it's like it's impossible for it to have been there being any terrestrial explanation, right?
Yeah.
And like many of the cases of this kind from this era, investigators will like point out how Edwards has basically nothing to gain from making up the story and pretty much everything to lose. Like he would be ridiculed, right? So
Yeah.
that's the classic thing that gets brought up with this case all the time. But the thing that people also really like to talk about with this case is that the UFO true believers will be like, sorry, I should say the UFO like extraterrestrial like hypothesis types.
Yeah.
They will point to this fact that Edwards actually, I guess, never went public with the story while he was alive, is what they'll say, right? So that is like to them a bolstering of the veracity of his claims, which I think even that alone is like kind of something worth questioning.
Sure.
Like, why would he withhold this story and like not want it to be told while he's alive? Well, like I also say kind of like, why not? It almost feels like prank like to like say like, oh, I met space penguins anyways. Don't tell anybody until I'm dead. My legacy will be this
like
funny prank story, you know?
If he is a total honest guy that is just like is living a no nonsense life, then sure, I can see. I don't want the hassle of this hanging over my head. But if any of those adjectives is less than 100% true about this guy, then that falls out the window.
Yeah.
And there's really it's 50-50.
And like,
you know?
I don't want to. I don't really want to speculate too much about whether or not he like just like fucking made it up and lied and stuff. Cause like I don't for one, I really don't think that he did. Just from the stuff that I've been reading, I think, you know, it's another one of those stories where I'm like, well, clearly something happened here, I think. But what happened here is like almost impossible to know.
Yeah.
But there's some interesting terrestrial explanations for it that I thought were kind of cool. But you know, the UFO, the people who want to like have the UFO extraterrestrial intrigue like chase that forever, they're just saying like, well, he never sought out the publicity, therefore he's telling the truth, which I don't know if that's necessarily the case. That's all I'm trying to point out.
Right.
But so yeah, by all accounts I can find, Phillips actually obliged Edwards with his request to not to like protect his anonymity. He basically would confide the story in Phillips about what happened to him that day. And Phillips would never release his name until after he was gone. So here's what Phillips said when they first met. Quote, "When I arrived at the farm, we visited for several minutes, gaining his confidence that I wouldn't reveal his name or location until his death. He didn't like talking about the sighting at first, but became more comfortable as we discussed the weather and farming. I asked him to relive the event in real time, and we began on his front porch, which faces the large barn near the landing area." So I get, it sounds kind of like Edwards took Phillips and like sort of showed him how it all went down and walked him around the farm and showed him where everything happened.
Yeah.
Now, Phillips also would get to, so Phillips is like investigating this area and he finds evidence of a hole. So there's a photo that gets shared about this story where it's a black and white photo and there's like a hole in the ground, like looks, you can't see the bottom of it.
Okay.
Now, this is where it gets vague and confusing because they're kind of like weirdly non-specific about certain things. Phillips says, quote, "When I arrived at the site, the traces were still quite visible. It is 1 meter in diameter in a slightly irregular circle where the shaft had rested. The soil was extremely dehydrated in contrast with the surrounding soil." So when you see the photo, you're like, it's not easy to tell what he's talking about here because you just see a hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where a lot of the discrepancy stuff gets pointed out by some of the more skeptical people, where they're just like, what is up with the like vagueness and the sort of like it feels like they're lacking in details of explaining like what the quote unquote evidence is basically.
Yeah.
So when you look into it a little deeper, you find that this sort of trace evidence stuff that Phillips is talking about is something that he clarified much later in 2005. And he said this, quote, "At the site, I found a circular depression which was dehydrated and baked, although the surrounding soil was wet and muddy. There was a hole at the center of the depression into which a device had apparently been inserted." So that's a little more specific, right?
Yep.
But nonetheless, there's other weird stuff. So I'd already mentioned how like Phillips doesn't actually come to see the site until 3 months later, which is like, I get what people are saying when they bring this up, where it's like, well, you should probably go see the fucking UFO site when it's fresh, right? Like if you really want to get evidence, it's like a fucking crime scene, right? On the other hand, though, there is like this almost insinuation about the fact that if this indentation in the ground and its hole and stuff is fucked up 3 months later, then something happened, right? Like that's, I think, the idea maybe, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing is like when you look at the different case files on this, for whatever reason, the landing shaft and the craft itself get sizes like mixed up. There's a portion of this report where you think that maybe the official documents might actually just be reporting an error, because at one point it described an official document, but for like, I think in the APRO bulletin, they say that the craft is 15 feet wide and the shaft is 18 feet wide. And so I think this is actually just like maybe an error of how it was like written down, basically, or somebody somewhere misspoke. But there's a lot of little details like that like some of the like pedantic nerds arguing online about this case were pointing out. So, but like, I guess the point of all that is like, okay, there's discrepancies. Okay, it's a fantastical story. We have no idea. There's no way to know what happened. If something happened, we have no fucking idea what. But I did find that there is another article. Honestly, there's another article that is Phillips giving an interview in 1976 to a Columbia, Missouri newspaper, where like once again, there's a bunch of like weird little differences in the official account that ends up in like MUFON database, APRO bulletin, and then there's another, what the fuck was it? There is a basically a website that is a database of humanoid alien encounters that also gets like an account. All of these different accounts have discrepancies in size, in descriptions of the creatures. They're all different. And honestly, frankly, I think it's just people fucking up in the story, like just not sticking properly. But, you know, of course, people who are very skeptical are like, this is a bullshit story and everything's, you know, made up. And that's why the details are so off. But I kind of like the fun little explanation that I found that, or not explanation, but like some internet nerds posited an idea that I like.
Okay.
So it was basically these forum posters were trying to get to the bottom of this case, and they start to talk about a military parachute called an MC-11C. And if you look this thing up, it's a big dome that has sort of long ovals at its base.
Okay.
When you look at it and compare it to the actual like drawings and descriptions that Edwards makes, you could see it being pretty damn similar. And they added to this suggestion, and it's merely a suggestion and not really a proper explanation, but Tuscumbia is about 20 to 25 miles northwest from Fort Leonard Wood, which is a military base, and that base has been host to the Military Police Corps, core of engineers, and the one that I thought was most interesting to see pop up, the chemical core.
Okay.
And the final little suggested tidbit that doesn't really answer anything is people were saying, we're sort of suggesting that maybe Edwards saw a thing called a paradummy, which is an explanation that I'd never actually seen given for UFO and alien stuff before, but it makes sense. So if you look up paradummies, you will see what I'm talking about. They are basically little humanoid dolls that are maybe 4 feet tall, and they usually are in sort of a grayish green, military fatigue looking. Are you looking at it right now?
I am. Yeah, I just looked that up. That, and even with the way the legs are, they could kind of fold up or disappear, be kind of weird looking. Yeah. That.
And when they're talking on the forum, they're saying their best theory is the light from sunrise was shining through the holes of this parachute. And I mean, the thing is, it at the same time, the way Edwards describes all this, it does sound like a physical stationary craft with a very physical thing. But I don't know. It's a fun idea. I don't think it fully explains it. But the military being not too far from here, hosting the fucking chemical core, the people but the people involved with MK Ultra and all this stuff, it's just a fun idea. But I think the ultimate conclusion is we don't know what the fuck the penguins from outer space were.
But our two leading theories are paradummies and Grounder from The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
So I think honestly we figured
an
it out.
Interdimensional Grounder that has broken into our reality like a fucking atmospheric beast.
Yep.
I like that idea. So now that is Edwards's encounter, Claude Edwards' encounter with the Tuscumbia space penguins. Are you ready for a big question?
Oh boy, howdy, am I ready.
Okay. What animal on Earth would you like to see an alienified version of?
Okay. So I feel like you could easily just pick something that's already really weird. I saw a sea mouse for the first time today.
What's a sea mouse?
I for some reason had never seen this thing before. It looks like a little multicolored fucking mop ambulating around. It's really weird looking. But that feels too easy. Okay, we're gonna make it. But so I think instead I want to get I want to see an alien form of a jellyfish that's on land, a hovering land jellyfish that's kind of but weird in a way.
Sure, it's a little atmospheric beastie, but I get what you're saying. It would be nice to see a jellyfish that could just hover around and talk.
Yeah, and maybe the tendrils are actually some of them are actually arms and legs so that it can kind of ambulate and stuff. And it's still has tendrils that kind of do other shit.
It's funny. It's funny because my first thought, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I remember being traumatized as a child in an Applebee's because they had the TV on and they were showing some sort of program that was about speculating about what alien life could look like.
Okay. Yeah,
and one of the
one
of the really crazy fantasy versions of it was basically an illithid from D&D, an octopoid brained, betentacled humanoid monster, and that one always scared me. But that got me thinking. The ocean is the perfect candidate for speculative biology stuff, and the most alien shit on planet Earth is in that fucking thing. I think it's high time we see some sort of a crustacean alien. There's not enough alien designs where the aliens have some sort of outer shell like a crab. And I think it's high
Zoidberg,
time.
And that's about it.
That's true. It is Zoidberg, isn't it? Who the fuck else other than... But Zoidberg even kind of falls into that illithid sort of area. Is Zoidberg secretly a fucking D&D illithid mind sucker?
Look, they're making new Futurama at this point, so they very well could retcon all that shit. But I believe he comes from a a planet of crab people that can slip out of their shells.
Right.
So
That's true. I guess it is just Zoidberg. Why not Zoidberg?
yeah, exactly. Zoidberg is great.
Wasn't Zoidberg supposed to be Jewish? Was that like a thing?
I believe
trying to
that
remember.
there's a lot of references to a type of like he's very Jewish coded, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if I don't know the in-universe explanation for that exactly, but a lot of the references are very much that. So,
Well, I want to see a fucking straight up crab. I want to
Great.
see a crab style alien. Maybe the crab can walk around with. I don't know if I've talked about this on the show, but I'm a very big fan of crabs. I think they're very cute animals, and I like to look at them do crab things. So it's like a shrimp too. I like little shrimps.
Mhm.
They're kind of fun for me. So yeah, more crustaceans in my aliens, I think would be what I'd be hoping to see.
You would think some sort of exoskeleton would become part of like spacefaring cultures, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
I think so.
that makes some sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Niall, are you ready? I can't believe we're going to be in here in under an hour and a half. This is a rare one for us.
Yeah, we might talk about that. So let's go ahead and take care of some business. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And run all your favorite podcatchers from Google Play. Nope, that one died. Whatever podcatcher you use, just look up It Gets Weird and we're almost certainly there.
Anywhere you get your podcasts, we're there. Twitch.tv/ItGetsWeird. If you want to see more fun Twitch streaming content, come and check it out. We did this awesome Halloween series of streams, and it's been a lot of fun. So please give us a follow over there. And then you can email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. If you want your email read on the show, send us something cool. Send us something interesting. We've had some really good emails lately. Just let us know how you want us to address you, and we'll maybe read your email out if it's a good one.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $1 tier, a $2 tier, and a $5 tier. The $1 tier is just a tip. You're just saying, hey, like your show, here's $1. Thanks for doing what you do. At the $2 tier, though, you start getting some bonus content. At $2, you're going to get It Gets Weird TV, where right now, Niall and I just finished up season 2 of The X-Files, and now we're starting Neon Genesis Evangelion. Can't even believe it. I get to talk about my favorite anime of all time on a podcast with my close friend, which has been fantastic already for me. So
yeah, the first episode was a fun time recording that one. So if you have any interest in hearing that, check out the Patreon.
Yeah, that's at the $2 tier. But check this out. We have a $5 tier. And if you want It Gets Weird TV plus a bunch more bonus content, you're going to want to hit up that $5 tier. So for $5 a month, you're getting It Gets Weird TV plus stuff that comes out in the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV. Right now, Niall and I have a bonus show where we're just kind of shooting the shit about all kinds of things. It's music, art, movies, comics, and even just little tidbits from the world of weird UFOs and cryptids and things like that come up. So we're just talking about whatever the hell we want, and we go and just record it, I guess.
Yeah,
so
check it out. It's fun.
It's a fun time, and so at the $5 tier, you're getting a shitload of bonus content. We have a huge back catalog of stuff. So you're not just getting all these new shows that I mentioned. There's a huge back, like hundreds of episodes, lots and lots of content backlog there. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, though, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday on your own little special Patreon feed. And you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out, chatting with the listeners of the show. You get to talk to us there directly, chat with us about whatever weird shit you want. It's a great time. So please donate to the Patreon. And if you can't donate, please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for continuing to support the show. Thank you for listening. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.